Hoops 7 proudly brings to you Basketball Hustle, featuring your hosts, the writer, Chris Pike, and the scoring machine, Shawn Redhage. Now it's time for another episode of Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle. Massive week in basketball. Unfortunately, not all great news in the basketball world, so we'll get to that shortly. But first of all, I'm your co-host Chris Pike, but Shawn Redhage, the man that you're all here to hear from. It's been a big week for him. He's been over taking a Redhage basketball tour, which turned out to be a great success and a lot of fun, so we'll hear more about that shortly. But plenty to talk about in the NBL world before we get to all of that. So Shawn, thanks for joining me once again.
Thanks, Pikey. Good to be back in Perth and excited about this episode.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think we just have to start with the news about Kobe Bryant. It's hard to imagine anything else springing to mind. First of all, it was obviously a devastating accident that happened that took his life, and it took the life of his 13-year-old daughter Gianna and the rest of the people on board that helicopter as well. Do you remember what was your reaction when you first heard the news? I know that when I first woke up to the news, it was just something that you found it hard to believe was actually real.
Well, yeah, I think that was your first reaction, just thinking, no way that just happened. I was over in Bendigo and woke up to alert that with the horrible news. And, you just look at Kobe Bryant and, he's just an icon of the sport and what he was able to accomplish. And then you start researching a little bit and you learn a little bit more about what happened and the fact that his daughter was on board and a few of his daughter's teammates and acquaintances and friends. And it's just a horrible accident and tragedy that it affected so many people worldwide. I'm still in disbelief and almost, I think that's the power that sport has. And you look up to these heroes of yours and you grow up and you see them knocking down game-winning shots, and it's almost they're larger than life. And one tragic thing like this, Kobe Bryant, 41, 4 daughters at home, just looked like he was, sometimes when you finish sport, you don't always see those athletes really enjoying and thriving in that next chapter of your life. But he just looked like he had a mission to be even greater in his kind of second chapter after basketball, and was doing some fantastic things and all the stories that are coming out about him and just the legacy he's going to leave. But for me as a father, it just breaks you that, he's going to have 3 daughters that no longer have their dad around. So from a multiple levels, it's incredibly sad. And, I had a fortunate to play against Kobe in that 2008 Olympics, probably the highlight of my career, playing against guys like himself and LeBron James, people who you just kind of put up on that pedestal. And, I guess one of the stories I remember before the Olympics opening ceremonies, all the athletes are kind of in one stadium and we got a chance to you're just waiting to get called out. And in the Chinese alphabet, Australia is actually almost last, so we kind of were the last one to get called out. So we're walking around and there's Kobe Bryant and he's just a big smile on his face, excited to be in the Olympics and taking photos with anyone and everyone. And I was fortunate to get a photograph with him, but just the way he acted and then on the court, he was just a monster and just his competitive drive was, second to none. So, incredibly sad news and something I'm still kind of struggling to shake off the impact that it's had on me. And I know, I wasn't even friends or that close to him. So I imagined everyone that it's affecting worldwide.
The point you made about how he looked ready to take on the next phase of his life, in a lot of ways, I imagine during his whole playing career that he never let himself probably relax for a second. He had just had that unbelievable drive where everything he did for the 20 years of his career was based around being the absolute best basketball player that he could be. And he just had that tunnel vision. But if you have a look at him over the last 3 years since he retired, he just looked like he was in such a happy and relaxed place. It looked like his life focus was to be the best dad that he could be, which it probably makes this all the more heartbreaking, where I think you're in a great position to be able to judge this, because as a player in the NBL, I never saw somebody as professional or focused on their basketball as you were. But then I've now kept knowing you in the couple of years since you've been retired, and you seem like you're in a great place, ready for that next phase of your life as well. There's so many heartbreaking facets of this, but the fact that he was so dedicated to now living the next phase of his life, does that just make it even more devastating in some ways?
Yeah, I think it does. It's just, you just knew that whatever he put his mind to, he was going to make it successful, and not only successful, but just having a massive impact. And I'm sure he had a lot of projects that he was in the works. And I remember seeing an interview he did right after he retired, and they were asking him, you're going to relax? And he was like, no, I was up at 5 a.m. going to work out. I was still, he's like, I still got to have my habits. I still got to have my drive. He's like, it's just concentrated in a different area now. Yeah. And, and just the way he looked, he still looked like he could play in the NBA. He's 41. I mean, you look at Vince Carter, he was 43. Yep. I think Kobe just probably had a few more injuries throughout his career, probably didn't allow him to play a little bit later. And I think he just kind of had done everything he wanted to do in basketball at that point. It was probably the right time for him to step away. And, I think that the Lakers did a tremendous job when he did step away, and their recognition of him. And he got that year-long kind of tour where everyone got to say the impact that he had. And you look at him, and I think people will regard him probably as a top 5 player that ever played the game. Mm-hmm. And I think his competitiveness, I don't think we've seen too many athletes with that competitiveness and drive that he had. And I think he's inspired a whole nother generation. Even my 9-year-old son is inspired by Kobe Bryant. Mm-hmm. So it's hard news to take. And I guess, thoughts and prayers go out to his family, and especially his daughters, and just knowing that, they're not going to have a dad to help, and especially one that cared so much for him and looked like he was enjoying being a dad.
Yeah, well, you see some athletes that aren't fantastic, I guess, family people just because of the life that an athlete has to be, but he seemed like the total opposite. That family looked like they were as close as they could get, which just makes this even more hard to take. But it's hard to know how to move on from it. But I guess people are here to hear us talk about the NBL and what's happening in the NBL right now, so we'll try and move on. But yeah, hopefully everyone appreciates those words to start the show, and I'm sure everybody listening has their own memories of Kobe, which have now been magnified by what's happened this week. Before we get into the NBL, Shawn, last week you took a Redhage basketball tour over to Bendigo to play in a tournament. First time you've been able to do that. How did you go, and what sort of experience did all of the kids have?
Yeah, it was a fantastic experience. A lot of these kids, they're from Mazenod College here up in Kalamunda. I've been doing some coaching up there, and wanted to take the kids over. It was it was an eye opener, the level of play over there. We played against Bendigo, which they've got one of the ex-imports of the Bendigo Braves, who actually I played against. His son is now at the NBA Global Academy. He looks like a little mini Ben Simmons, Dyson Daniels. He was just incredible, and I think the kids enjoyed playing against him, and the improvement they saw over the week, and just the bond that they had. It's one of those things, you just go away on a weekend like that, and you just see how powerful sports is, and how it can bring a group of kids together into a common goal, and just a leadership, and I guess it just kind of reinvigorates you with how important sport can be in a child's life, and so it was an awesome experience, and looking forward to doing it again in the future.
Fantastic. Now, we'll get into, we're recording this on Thursday, so last night's game that tipped off round 18 shortly with a big win for Melbourne United against the Perth Wildcats. But stay tuned for this episode as well. I've got a special guest. I caught up with Tom Abercrombie while he was in Perth last week, so had a terrific chat with him about anything and everything, really. It was a really wide-ranging chat, somebody that you've got a long history with, Shawn, so I'm sure you'll be keen to hear more from him later on. But let's get into last night's game. It was a crucial game in a lot of ways. Melbourne had to win to keep their finals hopes alive. In the end, I think it pretty much sews up top spot for the Sydney Kings, with the Wildcats losing. It was a pretty ugly game to be fair, with the roof open there at Melbourne Arena, the Wildcats just couldn't shoot the ball at all. Ended up going 3 of 20 from 3-point range. You're not going to win too many games while doing that, especially while missing Damien Martin and Tariko White, and then Miles Plumlee ending up in foul trouble once again. Pretty hard done by in a lot of those calls, I would have thought as well. But important win for Melbourne, and as it turned out, a pretty important loss for Perth as well. What did you make of it?
Yeah, it wasn't a pretty basketball game. Wildcats couldn't buy a shot at the start of the game. And, I played in a couple of those open-air games, and it is a little bit different. The Wildcats I know they didn't even get a shoot-around in the open air. So it would have been, for guys like Clint Steindl and stuff who are taking a lot of threes, you almost have to kind of tweak your game plan a little bit, I think. Mm-hmm. You go to the playgrounds and you don't see a whole lot of threes being taken. No. It's get to the rack, and I think that's kind of had to have been the game plan for the Wildcats. We know when they shoot well and they're capable of it. We've seen it in a few games here. I guess that Illawarra game more where they hit 11 threes midway through the second quarter. It was just incredible shooting that they're almost unbeatable when they shoot like that. But when they go, 3 for 20 from the 3-point line, they are beatable. And Melbourne United didn't play good. Melo Trimble was off, but they had enough firepower to get over the line, and a huge win for Melbourne. They needed that to stay in contention and get themselves a chance. The thing that Melbourne United has is they've got that percentage, so they've got to get their record up, get a few more wins, but a huge win for Melbourne United, and they got to be happy. You take them any way you can get them. It was an ugly game, but credit Melbourne United, they found a way to win.
You would think most of the time when you're playing against Melbourne United, if you can end up giving up a combined, 16 points, 7 turnovers, and shooting 4 of 17 from the field from Shawn Long and Melo Trimble, that you would beat them most times. But I guess it was a combination of Melbourne getting some good contributors from elsewhere with Golding and Luala Chul playing a good game, but Karen played pretty well. I guess they got good contributions from elsewhere, but also at the end of the day, it just came down to Perth shooting it at the same time.
It did, but Ajat Achul, he was awesome.
Yeah, he was.
I mean, he was the best player for Melbourne. And he played really good against the Wildcats early in the season. And I was at that game, and just that link that Melbourne United has when they got Shawn Long, Achul, even Pledger when he gets healthy, I think he could give the Wildcats a little bit of problems if they do possibly end up meeting them in the finals, because outside of Plumlee, they don't have that long, tall, and just it really affected the Wildcats. Their smaller four-man, Jesse Wagstaff, Reese Vague couldn't really handle that size, and it was a difference maker, especially when they're not hitting from outside. So I thought Achul, if you're Dean Bickerman, you got to be happy with the way he produced, especially in that second half. It was an impressive performance. Now,
as a result of that game last night, well, first of all, I'll ask you 2 quick questions. Do you still think Melbourne can make the playoffs? And do you think they will from here?
I've always said that I think Melbourne United will be in the finals. They're sitting a game behind the Brisbane Bullets.
And they play them on Saturday.
Percentage-wise, it's right there as well. It's not much into it.
No.
And they have to play each other as well. So I think it's going to come down to that game, one game, almost kind of a play-in game to get into the finals. So that's going to be an exciting one.
And in terms of the Wildcats, now that they're 2 games behind the Sydney Kings and there's only 3 games left for both of them this season, do you think the Kings have got top spot racked up, especially considering that they finished the season playing against the 2 teams out of playoff contention officially, the Phoenix and the Hawks?
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough. I mean, Sydney would have to lose one of those games against the Phoenix and Hawks, and obviously against the Wildcats on Saturday. So it's going to be an uphill battle for the Wildcats to get in. I think it's going to be Kings 1, Wildcats 2, Cairns 3, and the way Brisbane's playing, you expect them to be in the 4, but I guess you can't really throw Melbourne United out just yet, especially with the talent that they have.
Just quickly, I'll run through the rest of the results from last week, thanks to Hoop 7, and of course, head to hoop7.com.au for all of the basketball merchandise that you can ever dream of. And if you're in Perth, indeed, go and check them out in person at at Murray Street as well. Just last week's results quickly, Shawn, and then I'll get your thoughts on what stood out. Brisbane Bullets took another step towards the playoffs. 108 win over the South East Melbourne Phoenix. Sydney Kings probably did, as you'd expect, over the Illawarra Hawks, 102-79. And then the Bullets again backed up in Adelaide, beating the 36ers 108-99. The Perth Wildcats beat the Breakers at RAC Arena 80-79. And then the Cairns Taipans held off the Phoenix in Melbourne 103-102. And then the Sydney Kings handed Melbourne United a pretty heavy loss, 106-88. What stood out from those games that you were able to cast your eye over last week, Shawn?
Well, you're coming down to the business end of the season, and probably all those games decided by the team that you probably thought would win.
Yeah, I think so.
So the teams that are ready to get into the finals, they're starting to make their run and starting to find their groove. You've obviously seen Brisbane on a tear at the moment. They've just seemed to find their groove, but the other teams are starting to whittle away. And to me, Southeast Melbourne Phoenix is the interesting one. How much they've fallen from that great start they had. It's been interesting. They've got a lot of great players, but I think teams are starting to figure them out a little bit and have been able to make those adjustments. So it's you just think that, things are going to play out. And then for your teams, Sydney Kings, they got to try and get their people healthy. And I think the rest of the teams just got to try and find that groove. And obviously the Wildcats, I think Trico White sat out there. So they're going to have to try and get him. He's a huge piece. We saw that in the NBL Finals last year, how important he was to the Wildcats championship run.
Just on the Kings quickly, Deshaun Taylor's now starting to play a really important role. I asked you a couple of weeks ago and you were pretty adamant that you would still bring Kevin Lish back just because we know how good he is, but we're getting closer and closer to the end of the season now and he's starting to run out of time. Would you still bring Kev back even if it is just for the playoffs, or are you starting to head in the direction that you would back in Deshaun Taylor to get the job done?
Well, look, if Kevin Lish is healthy, I'm putting him in every day of the week. But that to me, it comes down to that. Is he going to be healthy? Yeah. Has he played enough games to get in as well? I'm sure he's got to come back and still play a few more games because he got injured pretty early.
Do you still qualify if you're injured? I'm not sure what the rules are.
You still got to be, I'd have to get that clarified, but I know sometimes they do make some, as long as they've been on the roster, they do make some concessions there.
He's only played 4 games.
You would think you'd want to get him a game or two before the playoffs begin. So it's he's probably, if he doesn't play this week, you'd expect him to play next week. But there's been no word out of Sydney Kings when or if he'll be back. So I guess we'll wait. The NBL's not great at updating you on those injuries and how that's all going to play out.
Now, we saw the New Zealand Breakers in Perth last week, and I thought they played a really good game. For a lot of it, it felt like the Wildcats were in control of the game, but the Breakers just wouldn't go away. And then come the final play, they had a chance. They turned the ball over, and they had a bit of a malfunction in terms of the players that they had substituted out because they didn't expect to have the ball back yet. And then also they just didn't take a shot when they should have. And Finn Delaney was probably the culprit there, who should have tried to win the game for them instead of passing it. But they played really well, and they've been playing really good basketball ever since really Scotty Hobson came back, and they've got Rob Lowe back, and they've got Finn Delaney back, and Sek Henry's playing well, Jared Weeks is playing well. We've talked about them before, how they're playing great basketball right now. I think they're going to run out of time to qualify for the playoffs, but is that a shame in some way? Because they're probably among the top 4 teams in the competition in terms of how good they're playing right now.
Yeah, definitely over the last probably 5-6 weeks, they've been outstanding, been able to find their groove, and it seems like everyone's just kind of settled in their role a little bit more than in the past. It's interesting that they would lose talented players like Corey Webster and the others, and still be able to find a way to win. But credit to them, having a new coach as well. Sometimes it takes a little time to learn the system, learn how to gel, and I think that they're definitely a team you don't want to meet at the moment, the way they're playing. And it'll be interesting to see what they do with their roster after this season as well, because they are starting to play. Do you kind of try and build on that momentum you've got this year, or do you kind of go back to the drawing board? I'll be interested to see what they decide to do after this season as well.
Well, I'd be tempted to keep the group together, especially given they've had a whole new coaching staff come in with a whole new philosophy and game style, and it's starting to click now. And I'd be willing to back them in to bring the majority of these players back. I think they've got their imports probably spot on as well. Sek Henry, when he's healthy, is a really good partner to Scotty Hobson, and when Brandon Ashley stays out of foul trouble, he's a very handy big as well. So I'm not sure they need to change too much. Corey Webster has agreed to come back, but whether or not they want him to come back is probably another matter. It's something they'll work out in the off-season. But to me, if they can keep this squad together for a whole season, they're well and truly a championship contender this season if they had have stayed healthy.
Yeah, maybe the one might be Brandon Ashley. I mean, does tend to get in foul trouble. They're not starting him a lot of games, so might be one that you might look. But, Rob Lowe, I like what he brings.
Yeah.
And the others, obviously, Thomas Abercrombie, he's a mainstay there. And Finn Delaney's starting to really step up his game. So it's, these guys are getting these opportunities and they're really making the most of it.
Well, it's a good segue. I caught up with Tom Abercrombie last week. He's a player that you spent a lot of your career playing against. You saw him celebrate championships at your expense a couple of times, and you matched up on him a lot of times. He had that sneaky length and sneaky hops that he's still got at this point in his career. You had a lot of battles with him over the years, Shawn. I'll have a quick chat to him about you as well in the chat to come. But what springs to mind when you think of your years of playing against Tom?
Oh, look, Thomas, he was so good in a number of areas, and I think he really improved. When he came into the league, he had that quick first step and could get to the rack pretty quickly, and obviously had some outstanding athleticism. But then he made himself into a basketball player, I thought, and really improved his three-point shooting, found his niche. He's a better rebounding defender than people gave him, and just had great timing. I mean, there was times where when he was in the paint, he was almost like a center back there, just protecting the rim. And, I still have nightmares from a block he had against us when we were making a run in that grand final. And he came out of nowhere and blocked my layup, I think, which kind of sealed the win for them. So, he just made game-winning plays, and a guy that I have a tremendous amount of respect for the way he went about it, and, all the championships he's won. And he was integral in that team that New Zealand Breakers put together that went on their winning streak as well. So credit to him. And I still think he's got a number of years to play in the NBL, and he'll be an all-time Breakers great. I hope he, for Breakers' sake and his sake, he finishes his career there in New Zealand, which I think would be the right thing.
Yeah, and it looks like he will. He's re-signed for another couple of seasons now, and he's already played 327 games for the Breakers. He's a 4-time championship winner, grand final MVP from 2011, and he's already the all-time leading scorer for the Breakers. He's made the most field goals, and you would think by the end of his career he would have also hit the most three-pointers and blocked the most shots as well, and probably not quite chased down Mika Vukona in terms of rebounding, but he's second in that category as well. So he's had an amazing career. He was very generous with his time to catch up with me. So let's have a listen to my chat with Tom Abercrombie now. Tom Abercrombie, thanks very much for joining me. As we talked about before we started recording, I've watched your whole career. I've written about your whole career, and I thought, while you're here in Perth, I'll take the chance to catch up with you. So thanks for making the time for me. Coming to Perth, is it always mixed feelings for you? You've had some great memories here. You've celebrated a championship here. You've had some great wins here. Cedric Jackson's three-quarter court bomb sort of springs to mind. But you've also had some disappointing moments too, where you've lost a championship in Perth as well. What's the feeling every time you come back to Perth?
It's always fun coming over here because I know it's going to be an awesome atmosphere at the games and things. It's always a great event, and obviously the Breakers and the Wildcats have had some great memories over the years that I've been part of. So no, I enjoy coming over here. It's obviously a heck of a trip for us New Zealanders. It's the longest trip and things like that. So there's a few other things that come along with coming to Perth, but it just makes it, I guess, all the much better when you can get a win over here. You really do feel like you've accomplished a whole lot. There's always, the whole time I've been in the league, they've been the benchmark, so it's always nice to come over here and measure yourself and see where you stand. Yeah, that Perth home cooking is famous, and you've been on the receiving end of that quite a bit throughout your career. But that first season where the new arena was open and you came into town and against all odds won the championship, every championship obviously is a highlight, but to do it on the road in Perth, how much of a highlight of your career now when you look back on it is that? Yeah, it's funny because I think there's not many guys now who've played at the old Perth arena and played at the new one, and actually coming and playing at the new one was a bit of a breath of fresh air for the road players, because it wasn't as hostile as an environment as the old place, and the crowd is still loud and huge, but because the stadium's so much bigger, it doesn't quite feel like they're on top of you.
It doesn't feel as intimidating, does it?
No. The old spot was crazy. Like that was a crazy place to play, and coming and playing at the new stadium was, like I said, was not quite as intimidating, but still an amazing place to come and play. But winning that championship over here was awesome. I think those first 3 years that we won them in a row, like, they were all different. We won our first one at home, and it was amazing. And then I'm not sure if the second year was over here or the third year, but we won one over here. We won one at the first time we went and played at Spark. 3 totally different experiences, and certainly winning over in Perth was a really cool one as well. To win a championship on the road is something really different. So I hold good memories of that.
Speaking of that old Challenge Stadium, I think almost the loudest I'd ever heard it was when Shawn Redhage had that block to win the game on CJ Bruden. I think it was game 2 of that grand final series. You went home and won it the next game. Speaking of Shawn, you spent a lot of your career playing against him, and as I've told you, he's my co-host on this podcast. When you reflect back on those days playing against Shawn for those many years, where I think it's fair to say he was probably public enemy number 1 for New Zealand every time we went over there, what springs to mind when you think of Shawn?
G'day, Shawn. Shawn was he's a heck of a player, and I just remember he's one of those guys you always got really frustrated with, because he was really, really good. He always made big shots for them and big plays. Like you said, that block he made over there was massive. Guy who I think most guys who have played against him hated playing against him, because he was just that kind of player. Got under your skin a little bit, and probably took a lot of pride in doing so, which is great. You want guys like that on your team, and guys that other teams hate playing against, but you love playing with some of the best players and teammates that you can have. Dylan Boucher's another prime example who I played with at New Zealand, who is probably fits that mould as well. So great memories of playing against Shawn.
Moving on to what's happening currently, this has been probably the most remarkable season in terms of fluctuations that you've been part of at the Breakers. But right now you're on an upswing, and it's remarkable that you've been able to turn around, because I think if you go back 6 weeks, I think a lot of people probably thought your season was over, and all of a sudden you're still fighting for your playoff lives, and you're playing fantastic basketball, you're playing exciting basketball, but winning basketball. What have you been able to do, apart from the obvious with getting healthy and getting Scotty back, what have you been able to do to be playing the basketball that you are right now?
Look, I think this season's had so many things going on for us on and off the court. It's taken us a while to find our feet and find our level of comfort, I guess, with the new coach and a new system and things as well. It's taken a while for everything to click, and I think guys are really settled in their roles and things now, and very comfortable in how they contribute to our team and things. And to be honest, all the outside noise and talk about everything has sort of passed over the heads of, I think, most of us as players. We just put our heads down, and all you can really do as a player is you go in and keep working hard and keep chipping away, and hope that things will turn around, and try not to focus on things that don't need your energy. That's what we've done as a group, and I think we're at a place now where nothing can really faze us. We feel very strong with what we've built, and we're on a good little run at the moment. Hopefully we can keep it going.
We don't need to go into the negative things that happened, but did you get a feeling that it always perhaps looked worse to the outside than it was in the inside? Did you always feel like things were actually okay inside the club, and perhaps the way people were portraying it outside was making it look worse than it actually was?
Yeah, it's always the case. I think media loves a negative story. It sells papers and makes headlines. It's what they love to do. So anytime there's a sniff of something bad going on, they're gonna chuck an article up about that. They're not gonna write about the good stuff all the time, because that's boring for people to read about, as sad as it is. So I honestly don't read anything about us, and I don't read the news or anything like that. So it's easy for me to just carry on with day to day and just focus on what we're doing. But I think different guys take it in different ways, and you just have to trust that you have a strong foundation there. And I think we've shown through all of this that we did and we do. Feel like we've got good people in place to take us through times of adversity, and that's not to say there's not going to be more, but I think what has happened has helped build us and shape us into the team that we are now.
It seemed to be when you were going through some tough times, that's when you re-signed with the club. How much of a show of faith was that from you, that no matter what some of that outside noise was saying, that you still thought the club was heading in the right direction and that you wanted to remain a breaker for life, and this is where you wanted to finish your career? Yeah,
I mean, it's always been a dream of mine to be a one club guy and be a breaker for life. And when the club approached me about re-signing, it was a no-brainer for me. And this is where I want to be. I want to be part of helping build up the club again. It's a lot of people talk to me about getting the Breakers back to where they were. It's not about that because it's a completely new organisation essentially now. It's not about making the Breakers what they were. It's about making something special with what we have now, and totally committed to that, obviously. And it's a club that means so much to me, and it's my hometown team, and I have some really special memories here, and I want to make some more.
Obviously, this will go to air after you've played the game in Perth, so no matter that result, are you pretty confident, no matter how that goes, you can still make the playoffs? And you'd have to say, if you end up in the playoffs, you'd be able to give it a hell of a shake the way you're playing right now.
We certainly feel extremely confident that we're capable of beating anyone. And like any player will say, you don't get too far ahead of yourselves, and we've got a long way to go before then. And all we can do is try and keep winning basketball games. And hopefully everyone's listened to this now, and we've beaten the Wildcats tonight. But we've had a really good week last week, beating Sydney and Melbourne, two teams who in the top four, and Melbourne, a team like us, fighting for that last spot. So it's good. This is the time of year you want to be in the hunt, and you want to be playing your best basketball. We're doing both, so hopefully we can keep it going and fight for a playoff spot.
We all heard coming into the season that Corey Williams told us how good Scotty Hobson could be, and then we didn't quite see the best of him early on, then he got injured, but now he's showing that had he played the whole season, he could be an MVP type player. From the moment he arrived, did you always see in him that he could be potentially the best player in the league, and he's now starting to show us all what he's capable of?
Day one in practice, I knew that this guy was special. He can really do everything on the court, fills so many roles for us, and he's just been fantastic, and he's an amazing player off the court as well. And in terms of, I think he fits our team really well with the confidence and things that he brings. It's infectious to the other guys. We certainly look to him to lead us in the court, and he's been doing a fantastic job. And like everyone else in this team, it takes a little while to find your role and feel completely comfortable in that. But I think he understands, and we all know that he's the man for us, and we look to him to really carry us out in the court, and he's been doing a great job.
A lot of people are talking about the Cairns three imports as the best import trio in the league, but I would think that when you've got Scotty, you've got Second, you've got Brandon Ashley, I would think you would back those three against any other import trio in the league as well. I know Brandon struggled with foul trouble, but when he's allowed to play, he's as good as anybody in terms of the bigs in the league. We've seen what Sek can do now when he's healthy as well, and his combination with Scotty is fantastic. They seem to have a great chemistry already. I would think you'd back your import trio against anybody's.
Yeah, for sure. Of course, I'd back my guys, and like you said, BA can stay on the court. He's a heck of a versatile big man. Gives us a lot of options, as does Sek and Scotty. I think, especially at the defensive end, we know what they're capable of offensively, but defensively, those guys have been really good in the last month or so as well. It allows us to switch a lot of stuff, and we back BA to be able to guard some of these little point guards and things in isolation situations and stuff. And all three of those guys, I think, again, found their roles in this team and very comfortable with what they're doing. And Sek's been a little bit unlucky recently with some injuries and illness and things like that, and hopefully we can get him back feeling 100% really soon, because when all three of those guys are clicking, we're very tough to beat.
How important also has getting Finn Delaney and Rob Lowe back, not only getting them back, but getting them back to full health, and now they're both playing their best basketball of their career. How important have those two been?
Yep, those two have been awesome as well. I think Finn especially was very frustrated at the start of the season with his injury, and Rob's was just a freak situation that you can't do anything about. But those guys are playing with a lot of confidence, and Finn especially I think is coming to his own and having a really breakout year, and he's really enjoying, I think, playing within Dan's system, and he's been doing a lot of stuff with Modi, our assistant coach, and working really hard in his game, and I think it's starting to show. He's playing with confidence, and I think Rob's just a guy, he knows his game very well. He doesn't try and be or do anything that he's not, and really smart player who fits in again really well with what we want to do systematically on the court.
I wanted to ask you about Dan and Modi as well. You've spent pretty much your whole career playing under Andre and Dino, who are probably very similar in a lot of ways, and you had a lot of success under both of them, and they're both great coaches. But what's it been like to now play in a completely different system? You've got a coach coming over a director of basketball coming over from Israel, who's got a totally different look at the game. He's got a totally different culture behind him, and I guess like the Breakers always have, you play a different style of game to what the rest of the league is. What's been different this year under a totally new coaching structure?
I think Dan and Modi obviously come from a heavy European background, and certainly a lot of the stuff that we are doing and trying to do is based on European basketball in a sense, while still being able to utilise some of the strengths and instincts, I guess, that we've built up playing basketball on this side of the world. And they've done a good job as the season sort of progressed of finding that balance between the two. And I think as the season's gone on, we've certainly all started to click and understand their sort of vision and things a little bit more. And a lot of it is predicated on good spacing and good decision making. And a lot of people think, it's very structured basketball and stuff. And whilst there is, some structure there, and there's certain non-negotiables in terms of the way we want to play and spacing the court and things, there's a lot of freedom within that. And I think we've started to see that once we've sort of grasped that structural component of it and the style, we've started to see the confidence and the freedom come out in how we play within that. Me, for one, I've absolutely loved playing the system. I think it suits my game really well, and really it simplifies things for you at the end of the day, really. It relies on quick decision making and good decisions. But I think for someone like me, it's really suited my game.
The Breakers as a whole, how do you feel perceived back home? Do you feel like you have the whole country behind you, or do you feel like it's just Auckland that gets behind you? Or over the last 10 years, what's changed in the way the Breakers have been perceived, I guess, by the New Zealand public that you've noticed?
I think we're definitely New Zealand's team, and being able to travel to the different parts of New Zealand now and play regular season games has helped that, and we pretty much sell out whenever we go to one of the regions. And we played Sydney down in New Plymouth last week, and it was an awesome game, like absolutely packed crowd down there, and they're fantastic, and they love the Breakers. So I certainly feel like we're well loved and respected throughout New Zealand, which is good. That's what we want. For better or the worse, we're New Zealand's only team in the NBL, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. The more that we can do to take basketball and the Breakers throughout the whole country, I think is a good thing. It can't hurt us, and whilst some of our home games might not feel like home games sometimes in terms of travel and things like that, I think it's all worth it at the end of the day.
Talking about Perth's move from Challenge to the Perth Arena as well, but there were times back, 10 years ago when you'd play at North Shore and you'd struggle to half fill that gym, but now you're playing at Spark Arena and getting 8,000-9,000 people there every night. The growth in basketball over the last 10 years has been massive.
Yeah, it has, and this year especially, RJ certainly helped in terms of our exposure and things in the off-season, but the crowds at Spark this year for us have been phenomenal. Awesome crowds, but they've been really into it as well, and loud and much more participating sort of crowd, and it makes a massive difference. Perth sort of cottoned onto that formula for years, and their crowd helps them a huge amount in games. And certainly our crowds at Spark this year have been awesome, and much different to what we might have played at back in the day at North Shore. Not that I didn't love playing at North Shore, that's where I grew up, learning to play basketball, and hopefully we can get back there one day and play a couple of games again. But loved all our home games this year.
When you're at the Breakers, do you feel like you're part of the NBL, or do you feel like you're fighting against Australia? What's the feeling like do you feel like you're almost neglected and sort of treated poorly at times by the league, or do you feel like you are treated the same as to the 9 teams? I've always been curious, what's the feeling like from a Breakers point of view?
Oh, definitely a bit of both. And I think we've used that as motivation, certainly at different times in the past as well. It's a bit of an us against them mentality, us against the world, and it's never going to change. We're the one New Zealand team in an Australian competition, and we don't feel like any of the Australians want a New Zealand team to win, and that's great for us. We certainly use that as motivation and fuel to the fire, and like I said, that's never going to change. It's just a reality of the league at the moment, and I think it's great for us.
For what it's worth, I've always enjoyed watching the Breakers play, and I've always enjoyed seeing you be able to win. I'm not just saying that because I'm sitting the other side of you at the table, but maybe I'm in the minority on this side of the Tasman. What about little things like when you come to play in Australia, you stand for the national anthem, and you hear the Australian national anthem, and you're a New Zealand team, and doesn't really obviously reflect on you. Is that a little thing that the league might be able to do better? It seems like, certainly in the NBA, where they've only got one team in Canada, but it seems like they do embrace Canada maybe a little bit better than what we do in Australia to New Zealand.
I haven't really thought about that too much. I used to standing for other teams' national anthems, playing with the national team and things like that. Yeah. So the fact that we don't get the New Zealand national anthem every time, I don't think it's a big deal. Not every team does the Australian national anthem here. It seems to be a personal preference sort of thing. Look, I think we're very grateful that we have a team that is able to play in the NBL. I think it's hugely important for New Zealand basketball to give kids something to aspire to and a pathway to play professionally, because whilst the New Zealand NBL is great, and it's I think a league that's on the improve, it's nowhere near the standard of the NBL, and it's very important that there's a New Zealand team there for kids to watch, and hopefully we'll be there for a long time. Before
I let you go, on the personal front, I think you've had another recent addition to the family back home. I think that makes you a dad of 3 now, if I'm not mistaken. Must be a pretty hectic life when you do get back home.
It certainly is. 3 young kids, 4 and under now. It changes your perspective, and like I said before, all the stuff that happens at basketball, you can go home and it becomes a little bit more irrelevant, and it's made this season pretty hectic for sure, but you just learn to deal with it as with everything else, and very, very lucky to have a wonderfully supportive family and wife who gets stuck looking after all 3 of them while I'm away on the road, and some of these long road trips have been pretty tough this year, but it's always cool. The sort of oldest ones especially getting to an age where he's starting to understand a little bit about what Daddy does, and can come to the games and come onto the court and things afterwards, which is pretty cool. So, I'm very lucky.
Is it challenging being on the road, being away from them? I imagine even on a road trip like this where you're away for 3 or 4 days, by the time you get home, when they're at that age, they've probably changed a lot, and you've probably missed a fair bit.
Yeah, no, it is tricky, and the national team trips are probably more tough when you're away for a month or something like that. But even 2 days on the road, like I said, I probably feel more bad for my wife leaving her at home, having to deal with all of them at once. It's a bit tricky. I get to come on the road and have a sleep in and recharge the batteries, so to speak. But no, you miss them, and it's funny, like stuck at home for a week and kids can drive you crazy, and you might look forward to getting on the road, but 3 hours into the trip you're missing them already and ready to get home.
Finally, you mentioned the national team there, and you've been a great servant of the Tall Blacks as well as the Breakers. How proud are you that all of your basketball pretty much has been played as a New Zealander, whether it's representing your country as the Tall Blacks or representing the country as the Breakers, which I guess you do as well. How proud are you that you've been able to do that for your whole career, and now that you've re-signed, you're going to be able to continue to do that?
Yeah, no, it's something I look back on and be very, very proud of. The fact that I've been able to represent the Breakers for my whole career, and the Tall Blacks as well. New Zealand's a country that's very special to me, obviously, and hope that I've done them all proud throughout my career. Certainly part of you that thinks what could have been if I'd gone to Europe and really given that a good shot earlier in my career, but I have no regrets about the decisions I've made and the career that I've had at the Breakers and with the Tall Blacks. I think I've made a lot of fantastic memories and great friends, and very proud of what I've achieved, and hopefully there's more to come.
Yeah, and like I said at the start, it's been a real privilege of mine to see your whole career. It's been a privilege to write about your career and talk about your career, and to talk to you on the limited times I've been able to, but now to sit down with you and have a chat, it's something I really appreciate, and hopefully we can do it plenty more. But all the best for the rest of the season, and thanks for taking the time out.
Yeah, thanks very much, mate.
Okay, thanks very much to Tom Abercrombie for that chat, and hopefully you all enjoyed some insight into a Breakers legend. And we don't always get to hear the Breakers side of things over this side. We don't always hear from a Breakers point of view, so hopefully you all enjoyed that chat. Thanks to ID Athletic for bringing it to us. For all of your basketball apparel needs, just head to idathletic.com and they'll more than take care of your needs as well. And I know that they've helped you out a lot at Redhage Basketball as well, Shawn, so you'll highly recommend them.
Yeah, absolutely. The uniforms we used over there playing over East in the Bendigo class had a lot of good feedback from that. So the boys loved playing, and ID Athletic took care of us. They did a great job.
Very good. Couldn't get any higher recommendation than that. So head to idathletic.com and they'll look after you there. Let's keep moving, Shawn. Indigenous round. For the first time ever, the NBL is going to have a full Indigenous round this weekend. We've already seen the uniforms worn by the Wildcats and Melbourne United in that game on Wednesday night. They look tremendous. There's a lot going around the games as well to celebrate the Indigenous culture and heritage. Do you feel like it's just something that had been a matter of time before it would happen, and it's a really strong initiative from the NBL to make it a league-wide thing, more so than just the start of it, which happened in Wollongong last year?
Yeah, I think so. I really like how each team uniform has a story behind it. And just watching the game last night, and they're telling us the story behind Melbourne, and I read up on the story a bit behind the Wildcats won this week as well. So I think it's a really cool idea, and I think it's a fantastic initiative. And just to see a lot of the funds that are raised from the Indigenous round are going back into getting more Indigenous players playing basketball, and we see how important guys like Patty Mills and Nate JY and that are able to come from that Indigenous background and make it in the NBL and make it in the basketball worldwide, and just how important figure they are to their communities. So it's I think it's awesome that the NBL is backing it, and I'm excited to see how it's going to grow through the years. But some of the jerseys I really like as well. I guess my favorite probably at the moment is the Adelaide one, that white one. It looks fantastic. So, but there's some pretty cool jerseys out there as well.
Yeah, I agree. Couldn't agree more. So look forward to seeing them all out on the court this weekend. Speaking of that, let's have a look at the rest of round 18, which gets underway with the doubleheader on Friday night. And we'll do this preview thanks to Devlin's, and you can check them out at devlinsonline.com.au or head to their store in Subiaco. And especially coming up close to Valentine's Day now, if you need to get a gift for the man in your life and get him something special, then there's no better place than Devlin's. So head along there, and Simon Devlin and his team will take care of you. Now let's have a look at these games on Friday, Shawn. Starting with New Zealand Breakers and the Adelaide 36ers at Spark Arena. If both these teams aren't out of the running for the finals already, whoever loses this game certainly is. So it's a must-win game for both of them.
Yeah, it's a knockout one. You got to think that New Zealand Breakers, I've been picking against them every week, and I think they come through and get a win. So I don't know if I learned my lesson, but I'm going to go with the Breakers on this one. I think Adelaide's a little bit too up and down, but I think it's also going to be a close one. Both those teams are basically, they're at the knockout stage now. So whoever loses, you're right, is pretty much done.
Now, the second game on Friday, Cairns Taipans hosting the Illawarra Hawks. Now, just looking at them on paper, you would suggest that it's an easy win for the Taipans given the form they're in, and given at 14-10, they probably only need to win one more game to guarantee a playoff spot. They probably need to win 2 of their last 4, I would think, to guarantee second spot. And then the Hawks have lost 6 in a row now, and they've only won 5 games for the season. But then you look a bit more into it, and 3 of those 5 wins for the Hawks have come against the Taipans. It's been a long time since Cairns has actually beaten Illawarra, so it might not be the lay-down win that the Taipans might be hoping for, but it's a game that they can't afford to drop.
No, you're right. They're still searching for that second spot. I mean, the Wildcats have to play Sydney, and
you're right, yeah.
If the Cairns Taipans can win a few, the Wildcats kind of have a tough schedule to finish off. Even though they're at home, they've got some tough games coming up. So you can't just give them top 2 spot yet. And the way Cairns is playing, I guess playing against Illawarra. And something we haven't talked about this week as well is the word that LaMelo Ball has gone back to the U.S. So he's no longer there. We knew he wasn't going to play, but I guess it's disappointing in some ways that he didn't leave it. You know, the word out of Illawarra is they didn't even know he was gone, that he just kind of got up and left and didn't tell the coaches or the players, which is disappointing, the way that he's kind of fitted into the community and the team there as well. And I guess what Illawarra was able to do, you know, they gave him the reins of that team. And although probably sacrificed maybe some losses, the exposure he gave them, you know, I guess it to me leaves a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth. The way it did finish, I would have liked to seen him just stay there for his teammate till the end of the year. He could still do his rehab, and we're only talking a few more weeks as well. But you know, that's the decision he's made. But I think Cairns Taipans do beat Illawarra Hawks quite comfortably in this one.
Yeah, you would think so. And I guess even if he doesn't stay for the last 3 weeks, you can understand that. But to leave without even saying goodbye, that's pretty disappointing. So for all the good things he's done, he left on a bad note. But let's hope in the long run he can somehow make up for that down the line and give something back to the Hawks at some point. Now on Saturday, 2 more huge games: Brisbane Bullets, Melbourne United. This is almost a knockout game as well. Really hard to see the Bullets not making the top 4 if they win this game. And suddenly if Melbourne win this game, then they're locked on the same record, and it's a dogfight for the last 2 weeks. So this is a huge game in Brisbane. No
bigger game on the NBL schedule, I don't think, than that right there. Not for everyone. I think that's what you want in the league. You want it to come down to a game or 2 fighting for that playoff spot. Let's hope for Brisbane's sake and for the league's sake that the crowd really gets into that and they sell out in Brisbane, and you know they can get the fans that I think that team deserves in the way they've been playing the last few weeks as well. So I think Brisbane gets that one, but it's going to be a tough one. I think Melbourne having to play on Wednesday night against the Wildcats, but they also didn't play very well. And so maybe sometimes if you're not going to have those 2 poor performances, and I expect Melo Trimble and Shawn Long to have a much better performance as well.
Then we've got Perth Wildcats and the Sydney Kings. After the Wildcats loss, it's not quite a battle for top spot now that the Kings have got a bit of a gap. But as you pointed out, and I actually hadn't thought of it this way, the Wildcats do need to keep winning to stay in second. So it's still a big game for the Wildcats. And for the Kings, they just want to build their chemistry at this point. They still haven't got their best team out on the court, and you want to be able to still take some winning form into the playoffs. So given they got thumped last time they came to Perth, they would want to put in a much better performance this time too.
Yeah, I think they will. You know, if you're Will Weaver, you're saying we need to build for the playoffs now. We need to build for the finals and make sure we're playing at the right level and learn how to play in a tough environment as well, because that's what it's going to be come finals time. And they don't have not too many more opportunities where they're playing on a road in a tough environment. So a great lead up for them going into the finals. If you're the Wildcats, if you don't think you can get top 2 spot, or top spots, I should say. What do you do with Tarico White there? We obviously probably Damian Martin's not ready to play if he didn't play on Wednesday. We know he's out of the boot, but you know, do you hold Tarico White out of this one and see how it goes, or was the Tarico White thing just a precautionary thing and they're going to play him on Saturday? I don't know how they play it, but I think with the Wildcats being at home, I think they will get this one. I'd be interested to see how the Sydney Kings played as well. They've been trying to rest up Bogut. It's a long flight. Is he going to come over to how many minutes will he play. So there's a few different storylines going into that one, but the Wildcats, you're right, they don't want to drop down to that third spot either.
Who'd you tip?
I'm going to go with the Wildcats at home.
Okay. Then on Sunday, another doubleheader. It starts in Wollongong, Illawarra Hawks hosting the New Zealand Breakers. This could be a dead rubber if the Breakers have lost on Friday night, or the Breakers might need to keep winning this one to keep any sort of slim hope alive that they've got. What do you think?
Oh, I think New Zealand Breakers, this is the way they've been playing. They look like they're gelling as a team, finding a way to play under their new coach. And, I think for them, they're not out of the things could happen. They could get into finals, but I think that
I think if they win their last 4, they could still sneak in.
Yeah, for sure. They've got a win that's going to be tough to do, but they do have a game at home and against Illawarra Hawks on the weekend. They've got their chances.
Then lastly, similar situation. Adelaide 36 is hosting the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix in Adelaide. If Adelaide have lost on Friday, then this becomes a dead rubber as well. If Adelaide have won in New Zealand on Friday, then suddenly they have everything to play for. Always interesting when Mitch Creek goes back to Adelaide as well, so there's that little extra bit of a storyline. What are you expecting from this one?
Yeah, I think Adelaide, Southeast Melbourne Phoenix have just been off the mark probably the last month and a half of the season, and they just haven't been able to find that groove as well as Dane Pinot's been playing and some outstanding performances by Roberson. Let's not forget that Southeast Melbourne Phoenix win against Cairns Taipans after being down, was it 6 with about 10 seconds to
15
go.
seconds
Does
to
that
go.
come back and hurt the Taipans? Potentially, they could be 15-9 and only a half a game out of second place as well. There's those little things that you go and look back on the season where they could potentially have home court advantage first round of finals. So those things always intrigue me, but I expect Adelaide 36ers at home.
Well, you factor that in, plus the fact that Cairns have lost 3 times to the Hawks. So that's 4 games that they've thrown away almost.
So they could be in first.
Yeah, it could be.
They win those games that were all winnable. So interesting to go back and look at. But I expect Adelaide to get that one at home.
Okay, we'll watch on with fascination to see how that all plays out over the next 3 days. Thanks to Devlins at devlinsonline.com.au for making that all happen. And of course, thanks to ID Athletic for bringing us the Tom Abercrombie interview and for making this show possible. Thanks to Hoop7 at hoop7.com.au. It's been a difficult week in the basketball and I guess the sporting world in general with what happened to Kobe Bryant and everybody else on that helicopter. But in terms of the NBL world, we're in a very exciting phase and this weekend looks like it's set to be a cracker. So we'll turn our attention back to the basketball and look forward to seeing what happens over the next 3 days. Thanks for joining us here on Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle once again. Shawn Redhage, what can you leave us with?
Well, I'm excited about that Brisbane Bullets Melbourne United game. I'm marking that one on my calendar, and just to go back on that Kobe thing, it's had a huge impact on me, and you just kind of look back and you just never know. And I think just encourage everyone to live their life to the fullest and make the most. You don't know when everything, the opportunities that you're going to have, and make the most of it. And I think that's something we can all strive to do, and something that Kobe did his entire life was getting the best out of himself. So I think hopefully it's inspiring people to live the life to the fullest. And I hope we can remember Kobe and he can inspire us for a long time.
Bye, have a great time.